It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 419. Tonight I'm joined by Mo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Hello.
Kodra.
Hello.
Tam.
Megovanen melon.
Thalen.
Page expired.
Is that what 419 is?
Yes, it is.
Was your long pause because you were hunting for it?
No, it was because I was doing the long pause joke instead.
Ah, okay.
I mean, I'm a teapot was a perfectly fine time to end this.
I mean,
Okay.
It's true.
For me.
I disagree.
I mean, there's a lot more entertaining ones, but yeah, Teapot is the very best.
So after a year of entering the housing lottery every week, it only took them adding 6 new wards to every single housing area for me to finally get a plot.
Woo!
I have a house. I have spent copious amounts of money on said house, but I have a house. They finally added enough housing to take care of any demand that was latent, but that won't last for very long, I don't think.
I was about to say, is this just like the previous housing allotment was reasonable for the previous demand of Final Fantasy XIV, and Final Fantasy XIV's popularity is driving the demand for housing up?
Yeah, so basically every week there were 1 or 2 plots available on Cactuar. In the districts I was willing to buy in, which was basically any place other than Gridania.
That's what my house is.
And
It's very pretty.
Gridania's fine, but I don't want to live there.
The trees are racist. So
Yeah.
there is that.
So, you basically, I would just buy, mostly I had like a pecking order of Miss, then Goblet, then Ishgard, then Shirogane, and then I never got desperate enough for Gridania.
Prior to them adding water, I think Goblet was one of the worst housing districts.
But now it's cool. Like,
Now it's awesome.
It's a great district.
I always loved Goblet, and now it's even better.
So, but like my playing Final Fantasy has basically been me logging in every 4 or 5 days to either put in a bid on a house or get sad that I didn't win the bid on the house because 250 people were trying to get the exact same plot. But when I logged in, so Friday is when I actually won the bid, and when I logged in on Thursday night, I was the only one bidding on the plot that I was going after. So I was hoping, and I think I was literally the only person who bid on the plot. In the ward I'm in, there's still a bunch of open plots that didn't get snatched up. So maybe if you wanted housing, log in a few days and enter the next wave, because there's maybe a better chance than you'll ever have. The best part about it is, though, I got our old FC house. I got plot 13
Cool.
in a Miss ward. So I have been happily not recreating the FC house because like it looks totally different, but it does make me happy to be in that nostalgic spot.
You can run around that wall again.
I can run around that wall again. So for now, I have a Shirogane roof because I can hop up on that roof better than any of the other roofs. But yeah, so like if you wanted housing, maybe poke your head into your server and try for the next round because there's still probably more spots open than there's ever been. What is Middara and why is it a good tutorial?
Middara is a board game where you are adventuring, doing some urban fantasy, anime fantasy. I don't know quite how to describe it, but you're kind of like Gloomhaven style, going on adventures. You've got this big old like 500-page book of story that will lead you from adventure to adventure based on how things go. It's excellent. We Ash and I have been playing this, and it is we were trying to do like the non-story mode first. We were just going to do a delve, and then we discovered that the story mode started you off with like predefined layouts for your characters, and we're like, we're going to go with that one so we don't have to build a character from scratch. And that was the right call. It takes you through sort of like, the story is, you're not full citizens / adventurers yet. You have to complete the final school trial, and you're earning points based on how well you're doing in these. And it starts you off with, I would say, a fairly straightforward encounter versus sort of the lowest level enemies they've got. It graduates you to, you have a boss on one half of the map and some more low level things, and it encourages you to fight the boss, like to try and lure the boss out from where it is, because it's in a very defensible spot, and to also not fight the boss and the small things at the same time. It like explicitly in the like narrative text suggests you try to do this. And then the third encounter is the first one where Ash and I really experienced difficulties. And I think it's supposed to be possibly the encounter you die on. And if you die, the proctors of the exam are like, well, why don't you try that again? By the way, here are 2 consumable items that you've had the entire time, but we're going to give you 2 more of them in case you don't have any. This is a hint. You're supposed to use consumables in this game, and specifically the enemies that probably killed you are very vulnerable to these consumables. And then the fourth adventure opens up with the boss, 2 of the boss monsters you encountered off in a corner, asleep, and they don't wake up unless you approach that. And there is a lever there that says "Don't pull" in the narrative. And if you pull the lever, you actually just get like a pretty sweet reward, but you're gonna get killed by those 2 bosses. Like, it was very funny as Ash and I were just sort of, we didn't really notice, it didn't like grok to us that it says "Don't pull" on the lever, but we were just looking at those 2 enemies down there. I was like, that will just straight up murder us, won't it? Okay, I guess let's hope that's not the path we have to go. And it was a very interesting scenario, because at that point we had no idea what the path we were supposed to take was, because in Middara you have these like objectives and totems cause you to read another section of text that's hidden behind like one of those old outburst style things where it's like covered up in like red, but you can put a red filter over it so that you can read it.
Classic.
And like, if you go to the totem, so this is how they have a bunch of loot that you don't know what's in the loot. And you have a bunch of like totems that if you see them, you read another piece of text, and it's like, oh, actually the cave goes much further than what you can see. Place down some more tiles, place down some more totems, place down some more enemies. And yeah, it's a very cool experience, and it's a very narratively interesting experience. You are playing as a group of 4 characters. There is the protagonist, Nightingale, who is a rebellious princess who just really wants to adventure. And part of the lore is like, all of the characters here have spent time on Earth and then come back to the magical realm, and doing that causes them to like change. So Nightingale has demon horns and like a big demon tail. There's Remy, who is the most quietest cinnamon roll you can imagine, whose father is the head of the magical mafia, and everyone's afraid of because her dad's the head of the magical mafia. And spoilers, she can also be a member of the magical mafia and wreck shop on the battlefield. But she's got these big old angel wings. And then there's Rook, who is just like this super brainiac smart guy, and he came back to Middara and got absolutely like Zangief style muscles. So he's fun. And then there's Zeke, who got a nicotine habit. He doesn't seem to have any metamorphosis to him at all. He just smokes a lot, and he is that anime character. He's the Spike Spiegel of it all.
Sounds delightful, and I'm so sad I don't have any free time.
It's as I've said to Ash, it is the rabbit hole I have tripped and fallen down, and so I'm like I am just obsessed with this right now and constantly jonesing to play it all the time. But it's the tactics game I'm playing right now, whose story I think is best executed.
So this next topic is probably going to take a while, but also I feel like if you're not engaged in this, you should put on the remembrance hat and fall back to our discussion about Magic the Gathering 30th anniversary and how bad that was for the Magic the Gathering community.
You know what? People are looking at Magic 30th edition and we're like, wow, that could have been
Wow, we got off real easy.
That could have been so much worse.
Yeah, exactly.
We only thought we knew how bad Hasbro and Wizards were at this.
So basically, Wizards decided to screw with the open gaming license that almost everyone has been releasing content underneath
For over 20 years.
for over 20 years. Yeah.
Since 3.0. So yeah, to go back in time, when Dungeons and Dragons 3.0 was released, Wizards also released along with it the open gaming license, which made the majority of D&D 3.0, the rules, etc., apart from like certain like trademarked elements, specific monsters, specific settings, things like that, specific names, available for anybody to use in their own stuff. Like you could write and publish and sell your own content that was fully compatible with D&D 3.0. Like that was the point.
It was amazing.
It was a huge, wild deal when that happened.
It was, and boy did it take off. There was 3.0 content for miles, and a lot of it was garbage.
Yeah,
but
like
some
there was
of
a
it
lot of
amazing.
shovelware.
It's the reason. I mean, it's the reason people are playing D&D and not Vampire right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
it was huge.
You know, as the saying goes, you either die a hero. But like at the time, Wizards was kind of losing.
Yeah, people who have been introduced to D&D relatively recently may not realize like the degree to which 3.0 changed things, because D&D was still relatively niche even after 3.0. But like the difference between the number of people playing and the amount of shelf space and how big this game was between 2.0 and 3.0 is probably like a similar to between, you know, pre and post Critical Role.
Okay, so
like just the multiplier effect.
Well, no, like it's even more than that. Like it's prior to 3.0, Barnes and Noble did not stock D&D products.
Yeah. Like
that was the thing that brought D&D into mainstream bookstores.
Yeah, if you saw a D&D book in a bookstore, for the most part, it was because of 3.0.
It's also
because there had been bookstores stocking D&D in the past. It's
B.
not like
Dalton and Walden Books, but like
but
it was
D&D
not a thing.
Yeah, it had fallen out of interest. It just wasn't doing all that well. Like they had made multiple poor decisions in the late days of second ed.
I mean, you could get Palladium books in bookstores before you could get D&D. And Palladium is a super niche game system.
Yeah, but it's got Glitter Boys.
It has Glitter Boys and
yeah, the OGL was like an attempt at a Creative Commons before there was a Creative Commons. Like looking back at this is where I'm like, oh man, like it's like, oh yeah, why didn't OGL like go under the Creative Commons? Creative Commons didn't exist
yet.
Yeah, because it didn't exist yet.
I mean, to some extent, the creative. I mean, if you talk to people who built Creative Commons, this was one of the things that they sourced, like hugely influential.
And disturbingly, like this meddling really came across as Critical Role should pay us royalties.
Yeah, it's very much like the company that makes the tools with which the art is made really wants the artists to give them money for making that art.
I mean,
Well-
it probably stings that for how many years now D&D has not managed to break into Hollywood media, and yet now there's a wildly popular Critical Role like animated series.
Which, may be having some influence on the number of people who are playing D&D.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yep.
One of the things that like really bothered me is this whole situation strikes me as the people making this decision have no clue how these systems work.
No,
Like,
they don't.
Like, the system you use is the most trivial decision in a campaign. Like, the idea of the campaign is really the thing that people are playing. Like, you could port that to any system you wanted to. Like,
within reason.
the concept, I mean, it may not be the easiest thing in the world, but, like, the rules are not the most important part.
Yeah. Like, if I want to run a fantasy role-playing game, just a classic sword and sorcery game that I would, that D&D is best at, I have so many options for that other than D&D. Like, classically, D&D is what I would, tend to go to first because I've been playing D&D forever. But like, I've got Pathfinder right here. I use Pathfinder. I've got plenty of other options. I could use MERPs.
I mean, we could take the Star Wars D6 system and port it to fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could.
I mean,
it's
they
literally licensed that system out to everything. You could do anything with it.
Yeah, like the tools to make the art, trying to charge for the artist it would be like Winsor and Newton saying, "Oh, hey, you can't like the art wouldn't be the same if you weren't using our brushes." Like, really?
Like, I just have this feeling that some lawyers at Hasbro started looking at software licensing and like the sort of stuff that Adobe gets up to and are like, why not us?
But I've never used D&D Beyond, so I don't know exactly what that subscription provides. But I know there's also been some information released where they were wanting to crank that price up to $50 a month.
30, but still.
Yikes.
$30 a month. There is nothing that I pay $30 a month for that isn't my freaking utility bill. Like, let's be real clear about that one. $30 a month.
I mean, this has all come across as Hasbro losing money in other places and trying to desperately make it up in Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah. Well, look, they're a publicly owned company, so if they don't try to grab every single dollar bill that's on the table, well, that's just not like doing the proper thing for their stockholders.
I just don't understand how you go down this path and not realize that you're going to destroy the thing that you were trying to monetize.
I mean, bluntly, how many tech companies didn't realize that things were going to go downhill after COVID was like cooled off and things started to open back up again? Like, there's this blind spot, and I understand how we get there, but there's this blind spot where it's like, oh, this gravy train's never going to stop.
Yep.
And like, there's an ebb and flow if you ignore that at your peril. Or, unfortunately, at the peril of a bunch of other people who are unrelated to the decision makers.
Yeah. No, because the folks that are making these dumb decisions will golden parachute their way out.
Yeah, I guarantee there were a lot of rank and file folks at WotC who were just as horrified as the rest of us when they heard the details of this license. More horrified, probably, because they know that it will, destroy the thing that their business is based on.
And that's the thing, is like, this move has caused irreparable harm. I mean, there are moves in place now to abandon the open gaming license and create a new thing, because obviously this is not reliable anymore.
Yep. They've shown that they can't be trusted. So, I mean, WotC has, walked stuff back and has made statements, and looks like maybe the actual new license is Not going to be the horrible thing that was leaked, but
It's not going to be good though.
no, and it's too late anyway.
Yeah, that's the real thing. Is it's like what this has proven is that they're willing to mess with it,
Mm-hmm.
and because they've now proven that they're willing to mess with it, it's like, all right, well, that's it. That's the game. This isn't like when you nerf a class in an MMO and people get real mad about it, and like a few weeks later, people have mostly forgotten about it because that's
a lot of companies rely on the OGL to actually function.
Yeah,
So all of those
businesses
companies are
built.
looking for something new now because they will not forget.
Yep, and that's why that's just it. That's the end of the game. Like it took 20 years to build up this level of trust, and they've destroyed it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, this has done more damage to D&D than the entire Satanic Panic of the 80s did.
Yeah.
And unlike that, it did all of this damage without really touching the players of D&D in any way.
Yeah.
Which is even worse because you don't have. It's not like, you know, one of the things that you saw in the 80s was people who were into D&D would band together and band with the company because they were protecting their, like, the thing that they enjoyed. And this is just like, you either have people who aren't paying attention and don't care and are going to be like, man, there seems to be way less cool D&D stuff happening. I guess I'll look into some of this other stuff.
Or they'll switch to another system and won't even realize it because they're not the ones buying the books in the first place.
Right.
Yeah, I have this weird feeling that over the next few months, the number of D&D actual play, YouTube videos and podcasts, etc., is going to drop drastically, and a lot of people are going to start playing other things, like Pathfinder.
It was reported that over 40,000 people canceled the D&D Beyond subscription.
They cannot possibly have had that many subs.
Yeah.
That losing 40,000, that can't be a, like.
Well, I mean, and so that was the thing, was it got leaked that, hey, it got leaked that the only thing Wizards higher up was interested in was the number of subs being lost. And so that when that leaked, it was like, oh, well, the way that we need to react to this is by unsubscribing, like starting a campaign to unsubscribe people from D&D Beyond.
Yep.
And like 2 days later is when we started hearing like, oh, we're going to have a response soon.
We're sorry, we promise.
We're sorry, we promise. So the thing is that like, even with the current 1.2, the like, hey, we're sorry, we just had a like internal draft, we were still working on it. First off, that's what they're saying, but they were sending that copy out to people to sign, so it wasn't a draft. It was being signed by other businesses as a contract. And now they're still saying they're going to revoke. They're still putting in. They're saying that the OGL 1.0A is irrevocable, but they're adding in clauses for how they can terminate it.
Yeah, it's
the number one thing seems to be they want to be able to get rid of the 1.0A.
Yeah, because nobody will use this new one if 1.0A is still available to use.
I mean, the joke when Ashgar and I were talking about this offline is I was like, yeah, they're just trying to get everyone onto a contract similar to the one that 4th edition was released under. And Ash was
My comment was that I didn't know 4th edition had any sort of similar contract.
Because
it was never used by anyone
went along with
ever.
It was garbage.
It was so bad, no one ever used it.
I mean,
because no one would ever want to print under those terms.
It was so bad Pathfinder was born.
Pathfinder was born for some other reasons as well, but yes.
But
no, that's the thing. No, that's absolutely true. Because I think if there was a way for Pathfinder to continue to, if there was a way for Paizo to continue to print modules, or the crew,
that's fair.
If they had still printed modules if they could have still reasonably printed modules, like I've labored under the I've labored under the incorrect assumption that Pathfinder was just sour grapes about the new system. But like having looked into it, no. That was actually very effective Wizards marketing spin.
Yeah.
What was actually true was, oh no, this is because like nobody wants to. Very few people want to write their own game system, least of all Paizo.
But I mean, it was kind of obvious. They didn't really write games.
Right.
Eventually, like they were like, yeah, 3.5 is kind of old and busted and needs to be updated, and so they built second edition. But no, they would be very happy if they didn't have to write their own game system.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, but that's the thing is like that killed more than just like because Paizo was part of Dungeon Magazine. Dungeon Magazine died because of the 4th edition move.
Dungeon and Dragon
Dungeon and Dragon
magazines both did.
And that's directly related to the whole OGL thing.
And to be honest, like Dragon magazine was some of the best D&D content being released.
Yeah, no, that was where all the weird articles about, the
paladins of different gods
and yeah,
different kinds of berserkers and
I have so many old issues of Dragon and Dungeon. I love them all.
I mean, as the old DM joke goes, there's the player who comes to your table with some splat book you've never heard of who wants to incorporate the thing. And you're like, and then there's the person who comes to you with a Dragon magazine entry. But actually, you're probably okay.
Mm-hmm.
Those were actually usually good.
They were usually good, and they were just an article in a magazine. So, you only needed to read a few pages to
Wizards
figure out what was going on here.
Wizards was way worse at power creep through splat books.
They were.
Now, sometimes it was kind of relevant power creep, like was the Book of Nine Swords incredible amounts of power creep for non-magical classes? Yes.
It was necessary.
Did that make martial classes more powerful than magical classes? No.
Not even close.
It did not. But it meant that I could be a half-giant fighter with a flaming sword that could run along walls. And it was amazing.
But, like, it was absolutely power creep. It was important power creep because, I mean, it was balancing because Wizards are always kind of broken in Wizards products.
Well, and then when 4th Ed came out, you could see very clearly how this was, kind of a test bed for ideas that ended up being used in 4th Ed. Nobody has spells when everybody has spells.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, and the thing is like, I think if 4th Ed was released under the OGL, we'd be in a very different world.
Very likely.
Like, this whole D&D 6th edition thing, whatever they want to call it, it's D&D 6th edition, is the worst of all worlds. They're releasing, like, basically a barely updated 5e with the 4th edition GSL style license. Like, who's interested in that other than Hasbro execs? Like, who's signing up for this?
Nobody asked for this. Everybody disliked that.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of exacerbating the problem is how long they took to respond.
Oh yeah.
By the time they had put together a statement saying that they would respond to it out their D&D Beyond channel, no less, not the actual Wizards channel, there were already 5 different, here's our plan for a different OGL.
Yeah, the Orc announcement had already happened.
The Orc announcement, the Kobold Press announcement, the Green Ronin announcement, go down the line.
Yeah, there was a lot of quick announcements that like, okay, yeah, no, we're going to be moving to something other than OGL.
It's very funny because like I know reading some of the Paizo insiders, they were dead silent about this for a week until they released the Orc announcement because they were trying to get all their ducks in a row behind the scenes. But it's like finally we can talk about this. Yes, it's awful. Yes, we're gonna do something about it. I strongly believe that. So Hasbro, like let's pull back. Hasbro is in trouble. The only part of Hasbro that's making them any sort of money is Wizards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I am sure Hasbro is looking at Wizards and saying, I wonder if we stab it if there's like 3 eggs inside.
Pretty much.
Like whatever we need to get through FY23.
Like I kind of wonder because I had assumed that I had misremembered that D&D 3.0 was slightly before Hasbro bought Wizards, but it was actually right after Hasbro bought Wizards. And I have to guess that just like it was such a short time that the OGL just made it through
Yeah.
without Hasbro being like, wait a minute, where does this make us money right now?
I don't know. I think that it's more at that point nobody could possibly have imagined where we would get to today.
That too.
Right.
That too. D&D was tiny. They didn't buy Wizards for D&D. They bought it for Magic.
Yeah, they were probably not paying attention to that.
Yeah, and even if they were, the idea that somebody would make a show where they're playing D&D and that would eclipse D&D as far as relevance goes, would have been like you would have been laughed out of the room.
Yeah,
I mean,
because this was well pre-YouTube. Like
was
streaming video
before
was
streaming,
not
yeah.
yet a thing.
Twitch didn't exist.
This was
The-
kind of
the
before
clo-
the internet almost.
Like the closest you could get was like downloading an MP3 of that one Dead Alewives sketch about
Yes.
attacking the darkness.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was your D&D content on the internet.
And it was traded furiously on a forum somewhere.
I mean, the response would have been, that's hilarious. It would never happen because we own all of the publishing. Like, no random person is going to have a publishing powerhouse like us.
What kind of cracks me up about this situation is like they're inadvertently creating a new juggernaut after they created one in the 80s as well, because Games Workshop originally was just a D&D module company.
They were. That's how they started importing D&D.
White Dwarf, like the first few episodes or issues of White Dwarf, are just D&D content.
Yeah.
And like because TSR didn't want to play ball back then, they went off and did their own thing. And
Which is it's so hilarious to me because Blizzard exists because Games Workshop wouldn't play ball.
exactly,
Yes.
it's a proud tradition of thinking you're too big.
Being a big fish in a small pond and thinking you're too big.
I still wonder what the alternate timeline is like where World of Warcraft is Warhammer Fantasy.
Right?
I mean, for one thing, orcs are probably like you can't really do orcs in the same way Warcraft orcs happened if they're Warhammer ones.
I mean, what? They're a fungus.
Yeah, but like they are cunning and brutal, but I'm not going to say like you can't have. There's not a lot
Brawl
of
nice.
heroism in the orc hordes.
I mean, it's true.
They are spacefaring funguses.
Well, Warhammer Fantasy aren't. They're just fungus.
They're just fungus, yeah. Well, but yeah. So we now have the open role-playing content license.
Well, we don't have it yet. Paizo is working, still trying to draft it.
I know that there are 1,500 companies on board with it.
That escalated
About
quickly.
That is the number I'm seeing put around. Like again, like by company, it might be like one or two people. Like
Yeah, that's Paizo's statement, is that more than 1,500 tabletop RPG publishers have joined to pledge their support for this license. But
Okay,
yeah,
so
like,
some of those are probably people who published one thing on DM's Guild, but still.
yes.
or people publishing on Pathfinder Nexus or on Pathfinder Infinite.
TIL, either of those existed.
But like, I mean, but also I see in this list names like, you know, Chaosium, Evil Genius, Green Ronin,
Yeah, this is where
Like,
Kobold Press decided to hook
Cobalt
their wagon.
Press, Mongoose, Monty Cook, Troll Lord.
Yeah, Monty Cook has been very vocal on social media supporting this.
I'm shocked.
Shocked. I think the only name I'm surprised to see here is Roll20, though.
Oh,
Not-
yeah, that they're actually like actively, yeah.
I'm not surprised to see that.
Yeah, all of the VTTs are real nervous right now.
Yes.
I imagine
Fair.
they are.
Well, one of the clauses is that
Your VTT can't be too good.
yeah, your VTT can't be too good. Like if your VTT has animation in it, and animation is not defined, it is not permissible under the OGL 1.2.
Yeah, like there's definitely an interpretation that says
Like moving tokens.
yeah, or like lighting features that already exist in these things would suddenly become verboten.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing that feels to be like somebody looking back at like, okay, how could we have predicted streaming video and Critical Role, and how could we have written something that would prevent that? And now, how do we predict what's going to happen next and prevent that?
Or, well, I mean, alternatively, isn't D&D trying to produce their own VTT? Like, I thought that was part of their plans.
They've
they
been
announced
trying
the
to produce
VTT
their own
at the
virtual
start of
tabletop since
4th
3.
edition.
Yeah.
Wizards is bad at the internet.
Well, you got to understand, there's a lot of competition, so...
Sigh.
Like, they originally licensed the engine that Arcanum was built on to create a virtual tabletop for 3.0.
Mm-hmm.
That never happened.
Yeah, they put together a really good character builder, and that's about it. And then for 4th Ed, they put together a character builder, and that's about it.
5th, they hired a different company to make their character builder.
And then they bought that company.
Yes, and then they bought that company.
The thing that bums me out is that, I mean, there's a number of things that bum me out about it, but the other one that bums me out quite a bit is that in so many ways, D&D is the role-playing game trying to be accessible right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yep.
and boy, that's a loss. It would be like if Nintendo decided I don't know, we're going to blow up their gaming division or something, where it's like, wait a minute.
How are we going to get people into games?
Yeah, like, how are people going to get into this?
Yeah, like, this is where we onboard people.
I mean, and they've had so much traction in media, and it's going to go to zero.
Yeah, I mean, it's the name that people who don't know anything about role-playing games.
It's the Kleenex of role-playing games.
Yeah.
So the hope is there are a bunch of other companies that are already saying, hey, we're just going to build our own darn thing. Critical Role is building their own darn thing. Maybe that'll be accessible.
Yeah, I mean, Critical Role building their own thing that's the sort of the nail in the coffin, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been following that. Apparently, one of the cool things I heard today, and I'm not 100% sure I've mentally worked through it, is they're getting rid of for attacks the test to hit the to hit roll. Like, if you attack, you hit.
I think that's reasonable.
I think it's very reasonable. I would want to see how it plays to make sure combats don't start to feel like chess matches. But apparently people have been saying it feels a lot like XCOM, Midnight Suns, very like modern tactics video games,
which is good. Like, one of the big problems that D&D has is that, and a lot of the things that are kind of offshoots of D&D, is that they've got their ethos mired in like 1976.
It's totally reasonable, yeah.
Where, like, I mean, and you see it in a bunch of like Games Workshop has this too, where it's just like they really love you roll a 1 on a d6 and the thing doesn't work.
Yeah,
and like because the imagination is that everybody is there just to be excited about what happens. Let's find out what happens, which is kind of interesting. But also, if people are invested in their characters or their experience, they like succeeding. And there's nothing that feels worse than a D&D turn where you're like, I walked up to the enemy, I missed, my turn's done.
Well, like, if you've got a weapon and 30% of the time it's going to fail, and 70% of the time it's going to do something phenomenal, but you have a weapon that reliably will perform no matter what, that tells me I'm never going to use the weapon that fails 30% of the time. I'm just going to use the one that's reliable all the time. Because, like, there's a lot of situations where it is too risky in the middle of battle to have a failure.
The one thing I keep hearing, so Matt Colville is apparently the one who works on Critical Role as like a creative writer and is also designing the system. The comment is that he wants to try and develop a rule set that leads to a cinematic encounter, which definitely makes sense as a goal for something you're going to do as live plays.
Yeah,
But
I mean that's
also,
the thing is they're thinking of it from a live play standpoint, and random success or failure on anything means you can't dramatic moments can't happen right unless you're lucky. Like somebody like does the dramatically appropriate thing and makes this amazing speech and then they roll a 1.
yeah.
Well, darn.
Yeah, no, from that perspective, I also think playing in a more cinematic game would probably be fun for me as well. Like that sounds like fun. So I am hopeful that we see lots of new things released under this new license.
I'm hopeful we see a lot more interpretations of swords and sorcery fantasy.
Yes.
Because there's so many different ways to do it.
I feel like some folks should reach back into the mists and, pull out some of the things that people have done in the past. Like, I don't know, Amber. You want something that's great for cinematic play, for like dramatic conflict? Diceless Amber. It's all about telling a story.
Yeah, I always thought the White Wolf system was really good at that too.
Yeah, I mean the White Wolf system tended to lend itself to gradations of success or failure,
Yep.
which meant that you could more like the storyteller could pretty easily keep the story rolling.
You could kind of fix a botch.
Yeah. Does CCP still own White Wolf?
Yes, I think
They should get on that.
should do something with it.
They should also re-release Street Fighter, or at least pull out the combat system and bolt it onto something non-licensed.
Fog Sudoku.
So this is a new style of Sudoku that is getting released, where most of the Sudoku grid is covered in a gray fog. And until you put in the correct number if you put the correct number into a cell, the area around that cell lights up and you can see the clues for that. Like,
so it's Minesweeper.
Kind of, yeah. The caveat is that there's no like failure condition. Like, it isn't going to like cause you to lose if you put in the wrong number. It's kind of just on an honor system that you're doing this the proper way. But it's really an interesting setting constraint to force you to be like, A, what can the person solve with what they can see right now? And then B, as a solver, it allows you to really focus in, especially at the beginning of the puzzle, on just the stuff that the setter wants you to look at to try and work out what logic they're trying to convey to you.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds like it would make it easier to get started, since you have a very constrained set of places that you can even do anything with.
Yes, it's definitely about like, with the very scant information I have, what digit can I next place in? And then you place that digit, something else pops up. It's like, okay, now I've added some information. It's a cool way of allowing a Sudoku to increase in difficulty as you uncover the fog, because you're adding more of the grid. Like you're able to see more of the grid, and there's less of a focus on where the clues the useful clues could possibly be. But early on, for especially like really hard stuff, like, it allows you to force your brain to think, how can I use this information to come up with a solution? And I've been really enjoying them. You can look for Cracking the Cryptic Fog, and there's a bunch of Fog Sudoku on their channel. Very recently, they had a Fog Sudoku that only has a single cell unhidden at the start. But obviously, you can figure out what that cell is supposed to be based on the rules of the Sudoku and then go from there. And it was very fun. It's a decent way to get into variant Sudoku, which has lots of rules.
So the whole Games of the Year thing leads to a bunch of titles coming along and then never getting around to talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Midnight Suns is one of those.
Hey, I'm still playing it. I'm forcing my way through.
I haven't played it yet. I just think it's hilarious that they've released a game based on loosely based on the most 90s of 90s stories.
This does feel fairly 90s.
Oh, it was so 90s.
So in the Midnight Suns, I mean, I'm not really playing the Midnight Sun. Maybe eventually we'll figure out how to work together as a team. It mostly starts out with you working. So it starts off with the Avengers having everything go bad with the Avengers times and ending up in this spooky extra dimensional abbey in Salem under the guise of Caretaker, who is apparently the sister of Lilith. Lilith is a problem and is the problem of this game.
Lilith is a problem.
And she is the problem of this game. And it's such a problem that the only person who's ever defeated Lilith is her son, the Hunter.
Or daughter.
What? The
Or
son
daughter.
or daughter. Yes, fair enough. Her child, the Hunter. Hunter is resurrected from the dead by Doctor Strange doing spooky stuff. He will explain it to you if you ask. Don't ask. And then you character create this Hunter, and it's a tactics RPG where you're like using cards, you're deck building cards to do like Marvel combat-y things. Punching enemies around, knocking them into terrain, knocking them into each other, knocking them off of cliffs.
This part is so rad.
Yes, this part is so cool. Every time you are fighting something, it feels super awesome. You've got a big cast of characters. You've got the Midnight Suns, which is Nico Minaru, Magic, Robbie Reyes, Blade, and that's it. Because Caretaker counts, but you never get to play with Caretaker.
It's the very slightest of overlap with the original team,
which is Blade,
and kind of sort of
And the
Robbie.
wrong Ghost Rider?
It was a different Ghost Rider.
Is it Johnny Blaze?
Johnny
No.
and Dan was Ghost Rider at the time.
Oh,
Johnny
Dan was
Johnny was on the team, but he wasn't Ghost Rider then.
But Johnny is around and not Ghost Rider as well.
Yeah, he was guy with trench coat and shotgun.
He is
Hellfire shotgun.
He is guy with trench coat and Hellfire shotgun here.
Yeah, Dan
and
was the 90s Ghost Rider.
He's a carny.
Yes. Yes, he is.
And then you've also got the Avengers, which is Captain Marvel, Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, and Doctor Strange is also there.
Doctor Strange doesn't like joining teams. He's on the
feeling is
Defenders,
mutual.
which he will happily tell you the Defenders is not actually team. It's just, he and Hulk and Namor and Silver Surfer just, happen to end up working together.
The feeling is kind of mutual. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of
He doesn't want to be on a team.
there's a lot of characterizations that I'm not necessarily used to. Movies, Doctor Strange thinks he's better than you, and therefore you're not worth talking to. This Doctor Strange thinks he's better than you and wants to tell you at length why that's the case.
Unceasingly.
Just will not shut up. It is fun that in the crew, he has been press ganged into Nico and Magic's spooky thing, which Nico has decided to name Emo Kids based off of some very elaborate anagram, or not anagram, initialism or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely esoteric magical observation. Yeah, managed to slide it past Strange, and so the group is called the Emo Kids. But
Amazing.
I like it.
the thing is, what I'm gonna say, the combat is great. The writing is genuinely pretty good at times, especially a lot of the interactions between characters. Doctor Strange is super annoying, but everyone knows how annoying he is.
It's my biggest frustration with this game, because this game is so cool in so many ways. My biggest frustration is that the total is less than the sum of its parts.
It's the mechanics of how they tell the story that it constantly trips it up. So there is this abbey, and you're playing a deck builder, right? So you're like going out on a mission, coming back, tuning up your deck. All of this is stuff like you can upgrade your cards, you can acquire new cards, you can create new cards. All of those are different physical spaces in a 3D world that is the Abbey. So you have to actually physically run to all of these different locations. You have to run to all of these different characters to talk to them. And then beyond that, there's the actual Abbey grounds, which are huge. And you have to run all over those, collecting reagents and doing quests to unlock new powers. And all of that is terrible and tedious.
It is not fun moving around this space.
It reminded me of, God, what, I don't remember what Mortal Kombat game it was. It might have been Deception, where you had to keep going down into the crypt and spending one of 5 random energy types that you gained through doing the rest of the game to unlock random things. And there were like, I don't know, 200 crypts to unlock, and you had no clue what any of them had. Some of them gave you important things, some of them gave you useless things, but like, it's just this thing.
Yep.
Obviously, they're just paths of time.
Yep. But the thing is, the game is already quite long. Like, if I didn't have to do this, I would still be like, this is a long game. Like, I am quite a ways into it, and I just got to Act 2 and apparently I'm only like 25% of the way through this game. It's a long game. They don't need to pad this time out. This entire system could have been a menu, and I would have been so much happier. They could have just given me a menu to like you're in the Abbey. You can go here to unlock new cards. You can go here to upgrade cards. You can even like put characters in those various locations and have them like have dialogue as I'm like doing the unlocking and like give me the option to talk to them. But let it all be a menu. Don't make me do all of this like 3D maneuvering around in space, because it's not good. The other thing that definitely finally clicked is I've talked at length about how I don't like it when a game makes you do so well before you can fail. And I think this is probably the most egregious example I've ever seen of that, where very frequently your mission in the game will be to defeat a certain like supervillain. Like, hey, there's Venom. You got to defeat Venom in order to pass this challenge. And so finally you defeat Venom, fade to black, cutscene, Venom just completely mopping your team up. Like the goal of your encounter was to defeat Venom, and the cutscene you get is, turns out Venom was way too powerful for you, and he's mopping the team up, and you have to retreat from this way too powerful Venom monster. That has happened I think that's happened 5 different times now. Ash and I I was watching Ash play through Fire Emblem Engage, and this is when I say, boy, Fire Emblem Engage really has a leg up on Midnight Suns and its storytelling mechanics at one point. Because they have you go and fail. They have something bad happen to your character, but the mission before that was not you trying to prevent the bad thing from happening. It was trying to get to where the bad thing would happen. And that actually felt reasonable. This is no way an endorsement of the Fire Emblem storytelling. Like, I'm having so much fun doing the combat, building these characters out. I'm even having fun reading like the social network, the social network with all of these characters, and having them like comment on each other is genuinely good fun. Like, there's this really awkward thing where something bad happens to Tony, and Doctor Strange is like sending private messages to everyone like, hey, Tony and I do not get along, but like I'm really worried about him. Just like if you see something going on with him, please let me know. And then something really bad happens to Doctor Strange, and Tony's like, hey, me and Doctor Strange do not get along at all, but like he's having a hard time right now. Like, just let me know if you think something's really bad is going on with him. It's like, and everyone's like, why don't you just talk to each other? Yeah, that doesn't work. We've tried. Like, you get the really, like, the good comic book stuff. You feel the relationships. Like, most of this story is the fact that no one takes any of these kids seriously, and all of the things that are happening to the Avengers also happen to the Midnight Suns, and the Avengers do not seem to like notice the parallels there. And then, of course, the kids go out and act rashly, and the Avengers get very upset at them. It's good comic book stuff. I just like the mechanics of how they tell it is awkward.
Well, the one thing that I've heard people kind of complain about is in the social system, it's very BioWare-ish. And then there's like an ultimate mission you get where you go on some thing with the person and, you know, they confess how you're their best friend, but like it's kind of the same for everybody apparently. So like you end up being everyone's best friend.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that.
There's basically two things that I think would have made this game better. Because it's so good. Like this is a tactics game done by Firaxis. They know what they're doing. And like they're experimenting, and them experimenting is awesome. The walking around the stupid Coven mansion thing sucks. Like it takes a lot for me to say this area that you built would have been better as a menu, but here we are. And this hunter character didn't need to exist.
Yeah.
Like in a comic book setting where so much is this like back and forth is like the good back and forth banter, having a character that's sort of intentionally devoid of personality, like they're trying to do the blank slate character thing, but you can't do that when so much of it is about your snappy dialogue. And so you have this sort of, I don't know, it's got this weird vibe where you're just like everybody's straight man.
Yeah.
And like you don't really have a personality of your own.
I mean, there is a morality system which is super weird in this game, I'm going to say. And I really wish it didn't have mechanical benefits to it, because I would probably be like doing a whole bunch of different stuff, but I really like my dog and I want to have my dog. But there's the good side and there's the dark side, but you're still a comic book superhero. So it's really the difference between like, do you want to be Captain America or do you want to be, I don't know, magic?
Edgy. Are you going to fall to the power of edgy?
Yeah, are you going to fall to the power? Are you going to be a brooding anti-hero?
And it might be more fun to be a brooding anti-hero if your character had more of a personality.
Yeah, I'm really wondering if I made a mistake playing the male character. Love Matt Mercer, but this performance is definitely pretty flat. Like, the whole thing is you are supposed to be from like 400 years ago, so you really sound like you're from 400 years ago. And that gets old very quick.
If I never have to hear a voice actor say thee and thou again, it'll be like there's one case in which I think it's useful, and boy, don't overstay your welcome.
So is the completion of the game getting Lilith to go back to hosting chill alt rock festivals?
I mean, so the story is you made Lilith go go to sleep before and then died, and like presumably you have to figure out how to make her go to sleep and then die again this game.
Something Darkhold, something Montesi formula.
Something. So Darkhold has already shown up, and the problem is that the last page of the Darkhold is with some annoying carny who won't work with us. At least that's where I'm at right now. but something Chthon is the story of this game.
I mean, yes, Darkhold, yes.
Apparently, Chthon is coming back,
He does that.
and for in what can only be described as really good ideas, I'm going around the abbey and getting all of the powers of the old gods, other than Chthon.
Oh, like Sidorak and
I've got Set. I've got
Watum.
No, Watum. I've Atul.
Yeah.
Yeah, Autumn. That's the one. They're the powers that allow you to do weird traversal things, and because they're entirely weird traversal things in the Abbey, they're less fun.
Okay, so the big question, if this story has the Darkhold and involves Chthon and all of this stuff, has there been an appearance in this story by the greatest Marvel mystic of all time, the fantastic character find of 1975, Modred the Mystic?
I have not seen a Modru the Mystic yet.
We can hope.
I've currently got my most recent character acquisition is Wolverine.
If Modred the Mystic shows up, it will be in like some tiny like background spot or something. I think he's been in a grand total of maybe 24 issues of comics ever, but also he's great.
No,
and he spends most of his time like mind controlled by Chthon, which is annoying.
I mean, being mind controlled is kind of a problem that's occurring right now, but it's a good story. The combat is fun. It's just like you're gonna like. The other problem is you're very obviously playing like a game in the style of Slay the Spire, and Slay the Spire is a game that has very fast like get in, play, get killed, restart, do that all over again. That's not what this game is. So ponderous. It's such a ponderous deck builder.
Well, and I would love to just I played a bunch of this. I put like 15 hours into it and then petered out because like what I want to do is spend time in combat. Like the missions are neat, the layouts are cool, like everything about that part of the game is so rad. And then I have to take some horrendous amount of time in this other part of the game that isn't. It's like, I don't want to say that the entire narrative section is bad, because honestly, I've laughed. I've genuinely laughed aloud at some of the back and forths because they're funny. But
you just literally described my problem with Persona games.
Yeah, but that bit in between, like,
because like I enjoy the dungeon crawly part of the Persona games. I just have no interest in being a student.
And this is the thing is that like Persona games are a good. Persona games sort of push my edge of I like the student part. Like it can be a little bit ponderous to sit there and talk, but it's one of those things. It's like it does almost always get better. But physically moving around in Persona is usually pretty okay. You move around at a decent clip. You're not like getting hung up on the environment all the time. Like that's not the problem. It can go on for a bit. So if that's not what you're into, then yeah, it's going to get annoying. But mechanically, it's functional, and this is just not.
Yeah.
I think this is a system that somebody thought would be cooler than it ended up being.
Probably one of the earliest systems developed for the game, and they never went back and looked at it and were like, is this actually fun?
The thing is, if like this feels like a very expensive system, like this map is very big and very like lots going on here. They spent a significant part of their budget on this system. And that's probably also why they were very, very hesitant to just kill it.
Well, and the thing is that system, it isn't even inherently bad. Like, I've played plenty of games where after my mission, I go around and talk to my friends. I mean, I love Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Like,
but it's a small ship that you're going around.
It's a small ship, and physically moving around doesn't annoy me. Even in like Mass 1, where it's distinctly clunkier than it gets later. it's still not like I'm still not like, ugh, you're gonna make me walk down this hallway. Ugh.
So it'd be like if between every mission you had to run all the way around Citadel Station.
It's not even that. It's
Talking to
like
all the people.
it's big, but it's not like it's like if you did that, but you were moving at 50% speed, and there is a bunch of like knee-high debris
Yeah.
that would block your progress assorted randomly. Like, that's the thing. Just like the act of getting from wherever I'm standing to the person I want to talk to is pain. And I'm so mad about this because I badly wanted that to hit my games of the year, because in every other regard it is so good.
Yeah, it's really great. And like, it's just this one thing.
Something movement, so important.
Yeah.
Always.
I am totally here for this weird, mostly unrequited affection from Blade towards Captain Marvel, though. The weird Blade Captain Marvel Captain America thing is kind of hilarious. They formed a book club.
It's a weird book club.
Mostly because Blade was trying to like figure out more ways to do stuff with Captain Marvel, and they were talking about books and suggested they might do a book club together, and Steve overheard and is like, I love reading. It's America's pastime.
What?
Listen, Steve is the most awkward third wheel ever. It's hilarious. Like, either third wheel or like also kind of into Blade. Like, the vibe is unclear.
That's a new one.
Listen, if you want some ambiguous Blade Captain America romance subplots, there's definitely more than nothing here.
I mean, the game that launched 1,000 ships.
I mean, I'm sure there'll be Tumblr devoted to it.
Yes, but Blade isn't appropriately British, so.
That's probably a show, because I don't think we have enough time to dive into the next topic.
Probably not.
Any final thoughts about anything? Anything quick that anybody has?
I hope VTTs are okay.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't want to go back to the iTabletop days.
I don't want to go back to having to license every single game I want to play.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See ya.